Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast. And with us today we have James Walker, MrJWW. Hello.
How's it going?
Not bad, not bad. Can you sort of do a little mini intro, sort of who you are, what you do for the audience that have not come across you before?
Yeah, so I guess you would call me a YouTuber. Some of the industry like to refer to us as influencers. And it's funny because that's quite an offensive term to an influencer. I don't know where that term came from. It's very much an industry thing. An influencer will never refer to themselves as an influencer. It's the most egotistical term you could probably dream up. But anyway, I'm an automotive YouTuber, which in short, before the world got put on pause, means we used to travel the world, going on all of the latest, greatest car launches, filming them and then sharing them with petrol heads across the planet. And in between product launches of major brands, we would also take the audience along for our own journeys of our own cars and road trips and track days and gumball rallies and things like that. And so I've been doing this for 5.5 years now. I started on my iPhone for fun. It was never supposed to be a thing. And then before I knew it, I had brands phoning me up saying, do you want to come on these launches? And that sort of self-perpetuated the content. And when that snowball gathered enough mass, it allowed me enough time and financial freedom to step away from the 9 till 5. And now I pinch myself every morning thinking that I've got to get up and film a supercar. So that's what I do. Yeah, here we are.
It's, for those that have not come across James, go check out his channel, MrJWW, on all platforms and whatnot. But we did a podcast a long time ago now, probably 2 years ago, which was sort of how you got into it all and your journey and all of those sorts of things. And then you've actually, I think you could possibly be the first person to have been on the podcast 3 times. Because you were last on it February 2020, which was...
Crikey. Okay,
we were
wow.
pretty chilled back then.
We didn't really know things were going to melt then, did we?
No. Did we do a snow tour like that last
year?
I
think... Did we... Not last year, no. Not last year.
No, it was the year before.
We didn't. It was the year before. Because I remember when we were all on... When the world got put on pause, our snow tour group, the WhatsApp group, is sending photos going, I really missed this and remember that, and what are we going to do next year? And we still haven't done one. We were all hopeful that we were going to do one at the beginning of 2021, but apparently not.
Yeah. Well, okay, so 2020, I guess things changed a lot for your normal schedule, and you were sort of stuck at home a lot. Was that...
Like it changed huge.
Difficult.
Well, it was crazy. I mean, for a spot of context, in 2019, I did 80 flights, 80 flights. And since the end of 2019, I've been on 6 flights. So when I say I've been at home a bit, that would probably give you an idea of the sort of change of lifestyle. And actually, weirdly, not saying that the whole COVID situation was a good thing in any way, shape or form, but from a personal point of view, I'd not long had a baby boy. So I was at home all of a sudden to be present for him in his very early formative years. So that was great. And to be honest, at the end of 19, I was physically, mentally, emotionally destroyed just because the schedule of it is relentless. And you're never in the same time zone for a week. I remember at the end of 19, I was on an Audi RS6 launch in LA. And then I had a phone call that same week to say, can you come to Saudi and do something? And I remember just completely changing plans, going, okay, I'm going to cut this trip short, go over to Saudi. LA to Saudi is like a real mind-bending thing, It's like, hold on a minute. And then immediately after that, we went to Tenerife on an Audi RS Q8 launch. And this happened within the space of like 7 days. And my body was like, what am I doing? So while my entire life did get put on pause and I was literally at home doing nothing for like 3 months, it was really good to be present as a dad and rejuvenate and address the diet, because you know what it's like on the road. If anyone doesn't know, Sam and I have shared a lot of road trips, And just road life's the worst, you know? Yeah. There's no like healthy service station. So multiply that with like lack of sleep and lots of different time zones. I actually managed to rejuvenate over 2020.
So, right, let's have a little look at what is the state of MrJWW at the moment. What in the last year, what's going on with the team? I feel like it's all expanded significantly. Got another base, loads going on. What is the team JWW at the moment?
So we, as it happens, that halfway through 2019, a good friend of mine, Darren McDermott, he identified that I looked absolutely shattered. And we've been friends for years through the car world. And he invited me to go to the collection of his McLaren Senna day. And I turned up, and then there was friends and family there, and it was a really special occasion. And he pulled me to one side, and he was like, "Are you all right?" I was like, yeah, I'm fine. He's like, "No disrespect, but you look horrendous." Right? I was like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just on this content train." And it very much is like that. You're on this hamster wheel, right? And the algorithm and the audience, they're this relentless consumption machine. Like, you can put your heart and soul into making a polished production, and the first comment is what's next. It doesn't matter what you actually do. So 2019, I'd probably rinsed, everything I could. And for years, myself and Darren, every time we meet up, when you just meet that like-minded person and you're like, one day let's do something. And we'd always catch up about projects and go, wouldn't it be great if we could do this, do that, etc. And then when it came to the point when he was genuinely concerned about my health, he was like, "Do you know what? Really, if you do want to do something, now's the time." And he quite rightly said, he was like, in a weird way, you're kind of like a taxi driver or a hairdresser in that unless you're in the seat or behind the chair, you're not earning. You're not actually doing anything. Unless I'm in front of a camera, the channel only ticks if I'm there. And so if I'm ill, channel stops. If I need to take a holiday, channel stops. And it just got to the point where I'd maximize the amount of content that I could produce. And without the idea of a team, it was, I wouldn't say it would stagnate, but the concept of growth and expansion would have taken a lot longer, or would have reached a natural ceiling based on the amount of manpower. And so since that September, and then through the course of lockdown, Darren and I effectively put together a plan to join forces, as it were, and we set up a company called the Production Bunker, and that's allowed us to plug in team. So we effectively have full-time cameraman, editors, we've got people dealing with brand deals, logistics, the bunker studio, which we actually have as a physical building now, is a base which was designed really to put bricks on the ground, because not too many people in this space do that. We sort of feel the need to keep it all online. But also it was an opportunity to not have to travel as much in order to create content. We had it where brands would, thankfully, they really liked the concept of this studio, and instead of having to fly halfway around the world to film a car, they'd go, "Do you know what? That place looks really cool. Why don't we just drop off the car there?" And that for me has been a game changer. And then on top of that, lockdown came. And with that, all of the rules about social distancing and how many people you could have in a space. And so we started a series focusing on sort of contemporary classics. So from sort of the late 80s until sort of early 2000s, filming everything from F40 up to sort of SLS Black Series. And it was a great series because it allowed me to film at home at that base. Lots of brands, often have a sort of heritage fleet where, I can phone up and go, "Oh, that 997 3.8 RS you've got, is there any chance I can use that?" And during lockdown, brands very quickly twigged on that they could drop a car off with us and have no responsibility. So they were like, yeah, you got all that COVID stuff sorted out, right? Okay. There you go. And so that after lockdown 1, which I honestly spent, my YouTube channel became like the YouTube equivalent of Dave. It was just reruns, right? So I would sit there and I'd go back over old stuff, and I'd be like, oh, there's some footage here I didn't share, or there's some stories I didn't tell. And I would sit in my kitchen with the like TV on in the background, and I would tell these stories about untold journeys. And that just scraped me through lockdown. Yeah. And then after that, we managed to get the bunker built, and that acted as our base for the following 12 months then, because there was no car launches. There was no traveling anywhere. New content wasn't really available because there wasn't too many, road trips going on. Well, road trips, zero. Track days began to unfold a bit, but there's only so much track content you can actually film. So we were like, right, we need to come up with a series. And so we ended up putting through these sort of modern classics, really. It was which is really what launched that space. And since then, team's grown, and the bunker started out as a building in itself. But over the next few weeks and months, you'll probably find that the bunker as a name will become more of a bunker group, and it'll have lots of sub things from there, which we've been graced with the time really to actually work on that, because I haven't been all over the world. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people who've been sort of artificially stopped. Now, yes, that can be an awful thing, and for a lot of people, it's been an absolute nightmare. But having some kind of enforced, like, you can't just keep run, you've got to stop. And loads of people, I think quite a few people I know have like really looked at their overall what they're doing and whether this is the journey and how they want to do it and whether they want to do it differently, and like have started to put in plans for changing it for the better longer term. Because like, as you said, it is just like a massive hamster wheel that everyone's on in that kind of content, YouTube-y type world. And like for me, definitely, like there's doing these, I've done tons more, but they're all done over the internet. So it saves like you, obviously it's great when we see each other, but like you don't have to drive 2 hours down to London. I don't have to drive 2 hours up to you. And then you do the thing that you're there to do, and then the extra 2 hours to get home and whatever, and then you're like you said, you're eating crap food on the road, and you're away from home, and you lose so much time. But yeah, it must be great having cars. I have this on a tiny level. I can now have cars delivered to where I am because I've got some space. But being able to have cars dropped off at the bunker and then having a bit of a track and like and great roads nearby and stuff must be really great.
It's been a game changer. I mean, it was, what your typical launch would look like. And it's funny because, from an audience point of view, it's our job to sort of paint this very, the content we put out is an escapism for most people. There's a certain amount of people who are watching that video because they might genuinely be interested in driving that car. But the inherent nature of the channel is we're focusing on supercars, hypercars. There's only a small amount of people who are probably in the market for that. So the rest of the audience is watching it for entertainment, education, etc. And so there was this big part of it where we wanted to entertain the audience through the escapism of the locations that we were going to, because brands do a phenomenal job of landing you in the most abstract place you would never go to drive a car, like literally on the side of a volcano or something like that. And so you would come away with this amazing catalog of lifestyle content. And that was a great thing. And then all of a sudden, you hit the pause button and you're filming in your kitchen. Right? So you're like, okay, how am I going to do this? So truthfully, if it wasn't for having the bunker, I'd have struggled because it'd have been like, right, what format do we actually have here? And I generally keep all of my house and private life off screen. So I didn't want cars dropped off at home. So I was like, how are we planning on doing this? And it was kind of with hindsight, really. You know, we got the keys to the bunker end of 2019. So we didn't know the world was about to get paused, right? Yeah. So it just so happens with hindsight that we got this space and we were like, okay, it's a great space. We got our own track and we've got some great roads. And thankfully, the backdrop of this studio appealed to brands and they were on the phone saying, do you want this? Do you want that? And it just worked out well. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. One brand you did some stuff with, small company, not particularly interested. Koenigsegg. Yeah. You did a series driving like all the cars.
Yeah. So we did a series called the Chronicles of Koenigsegg. And this was an amazing project that I'm still amazed that it actually happened. And that was as a result of my business partner, Darren, who I was just, speaking about. He's a good client of the brand. I'd got fairly friendly with Christian over the years from filming cars. And we'd also put a deposit on a Koenigsegg Jumeirah earlier that year. And so we got a really good thing happening there. And we got quite a lot of content planned as part of that journey. And then, of course, world stopped. Everyone stopped. So we were like, well, we really like to showcase some more Koenigsegg story. And the journey on my channel had been quite sort of split up with like random drives here and there of various cars. There wasn't a great deal of story to it. And we thought, wouldn't it be great to set the context for our audience as to where this journey started as a brand? Because I think the majority of headlines of Koenigsegg are world's fastest car here, or, fastest 0 to 400 to 0 mark, or something like that. And so we worked really closely with Super Vettura, who are the Koenigsegg dealer over here in the UK, together with the factory. And remarkably, we managed to pull together 6 Koenigsegg's that I had to film and drive all in the same week. so which from an insurance point of view was challenging, because I think on our car park on day 1 of filming, the car park was valued at 40 million quid. So our insurers were like, what are you doing here? Are you taking it out on the road or are you taking it out on the track? We're like, we're doing both. And so the actual logistics of getting those cars in one place wasn't too bad, because when the factory when Christian phones up an owner and goes, hey, we're filming this series, is there any chance we can use your car? It generally happens, because I'm finding owners of Koenigseggs are fantastic ambassadors of that brand. They really love to use them, get them out there and actually share them. The logistics of getting insured on that is a very different story. Yeah. So, and it also as well, there's one thing getting insured on a car to drive it when it turns into a commercial operation. So obviously my line of work is making films. It wasn't just driving these cars. So as soon as the insurance found out that I wasn't just driving them, I was filming them as well, it just went to a completely different area. And to actually arrange that took about 3 months. Took a long time. So, but what that resulted in was almost the very earliest Koenigsegg made, landed at the bunker, punctuated by every other Koenigsegg model which had been made up to that point. So, and we also launched that with a great interview with Christian. I mean, you've had him on the channel, right? You could just press play on that guy and just listen to him talk. So, and the insight he gave us into the brand and how it started and these incredible stories. And that's how it sort of launched. And then off the back of that, over the course of 6 weeks, we would launch an episode starting with the earliest car, which back then was like, which sounds crazy now because it's still a lot now, but there was like a 600 horsepower car, which is still nuts, right? It's still crazy. 600 horsepower, rear wheel drive, manual, like big, heavy manual gearbox. And now they're like 1800 horsepower. And we finished with the Koenigsegg Rug era, which has no gears at all. You know,
Yes.
it's a direct drive, single geared, like hybrid. And to condense that journey, for me, I drove it all in 1 week. For the audience, it was dragged out over about 6 weeks. But hopping from generation was bonkers. It was like, I cannot believe the rate of evolution of this company, which by and large is quite small. And what they create out of there in Sweden, the dude's loose, man. Like, he creates some unbelievable things, unbelievable stuff. So yeah, it was an amazing journey, and we were really honored that was effectively an official Koenigsegg supported film. So yeah, it's cool.
Super cool. So like the early car. So what was the early one? What was the earliest one you drove? Was it like a CCR or something like that?
Yeah, CCR. We couldn't get hold of the CC8. There
was that the first
one
one
available? Yeah, we couldn't get hold of that. There's one in a museum, which is just down the road from the factory, and logistically it was hard work. So we couldn't get that. But the earliest car, it was a bright green one. It was like this iridescent. I think it was literally called Koenigsegg Racing Green. And remarkably, no other Koenigsegg has been painted that since. It's the only one.
I feel like I've seen that
green
car somewhere.
Yeah, and it has those iconic Koenigsegg wheels, you know, with all those holes, like fairly flat, those holes, and the weighting of everything. I mean, just the shift and the clutch. It was like leg day on the clutch, you know. It was crazy. But when I drove this thing, I was thinking, crikey, when this thing launched, I mean, at that time, the company really wasn't taken that seriously. It was this like startup from Sweden who builds a supercar in Sweden, right? It's like, and then when I got into this thing, I was like, if any journalists actually got their hands on it then, it would have blown their minds, because it was ridiculous like last year. You know, it was still nuts.
So when did that car come out? What was the year of the car you drove? Do you know, roughly? Is it like 05 or something like that, or is it before or after?
Well, it was based on a car from the late 90s, right? So the actual chassis was based on an early car, and I think this car was like an 04.
Yeah.
04 car. I think
04 to 06 apparently.
Yeah,
CCR.
yeah. That's it. And you get in it. Okay, the interior is a bit old, but when you set that aside and you look down at the speedo and you're like, how is that doing that? You know? And everything about it worked, you know, like the brakes shut off all of the speed. I think the most fascinating thing about it was the design language, even though it was a little bit crude then, has found its way all the way through now, like that massive, thin, sweeping windscreen. Like you see it and you're like, it actually hasn't changed that much as like a fundamental shape, but the technology under it, things got pretty hectic fairly soon after that. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, brand.
Yeah. Then so like, okay, let's not say the Regera, but you drove a 1-1, right?
Yeah,
which is
I drove 1-1.
That's kind of the Regera is I would say it's like something different, isn't it? It's like the whole single gear thing puts it in a different category to these other cars. But 1-1, what's that? 1,500 horsepower? No, it's like 1,340 or something. Yeah, 1,340 kilos.
Yeah, 1,340 kilos, 1,340 horsepower. So it's got this
roughly
unicorn magic 1-to-1 power to weight ratio, and what's that like? It's absolutely ridiculous. it's like. It was, I mean, I guess predictably, it was probably the one that I enjoyed the most, because it was the most theatrical thing.
Yeah.
One thing that I was taken by out of all of it, I mean, we drove it on our track, which is, as far as tracks goes, is very short. It's the least conducive track for a Koenigsegg. Let's just say that.
Go-kart track.
Yeah, it's absolutely tiny. But when we drove the 1-to-1, it had rained in the morning, and by the time we'd done all of the sort of tracking shots and things like that, there was just like sort of damp patches.
Yeah,
it wasn't bad, but when you've got that amount of horsepower and torque, it's not great. But the traction control system that they'd developed on that car, every time I went over a damp patch, it sounded like a road drill. It would go like that. And I was like, what is this noise? I was like, this is the strangest sound. And it happened every time I went over this wet patch.
Yeah.
It's really, really odd. I don't know. So I got back, and I'm actually speaking because during filming we were checking for like stats and making sure everything was okay. So we would phone the factory, and the guy at the factory said, "Have you got anything to feed back on us that?" And I said, "Yeah." Funnily enough, every now and again in the 1-to-1, this like machine gun goes off in the cab. And the first thing he said to me, he goes, "Is it wet?" I said, "It's not wet." He goes, "Is it patchy?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "That is the traction control, right? And the way that it nips the wheels and cuts in the power is it breaks up the power to such a finite degree that it sounds like a gun, right?" So every time it's going around, what that noise effectively is the ECU and the traction control keeping all 1,300 horsepower in check over the course of like several tiny moments in time. And he was like, "Yeah, if it doesn't make that noise, you need to be careful because you'll be into the undergrowth of Oxfordshire really quickly. So just be thankful that it's doing that." But I'm not joking. The traction control was like that. It was just the most amazing
how loud
thing.
that is.
Yeah, it was. But to feel it happening, and once someone had told me it was traction, I was like, "Oh my God, this thing is witchcraft." It was just gnarly, honestly.
And does it like put the power down?
Yeah, it does. I mean, they came up with that now famous triplex suspension setup, which effectively runs a third damper, which is this anti-squat. And as a result, you can unleash, like I was giving it flat in second gear, and there would be a quick blip on the dashboard to suggest that it just kept you in check for a brief second,
and then it's off.
And then it's off, and it just sort of, it has a very mild progressive squat about it. And then once it's found its sort of, trim, it just picks up and goes. It's kind of like, when you're on a jet ski and until you get to planing, it's a bit weird. It's sort of a bit slow. And like the 1-to-1 was kind of like that in that its operating window was so high that you had to find some speed for it to actually feel good. And it was very much like that. And at speed, it was amazing. It was just, because as well it's so light, like 1,300 and something kilograms of a car that big is incredible. And it's a really big car. And then you realize that the wheels are 100 grand each. No, sorry. The wheels are 100 grand for the whole set. Yeah. Right. And it's like, okay, these are the lightest carbon fiber air core wheels in the world. And when you start to look at every single component in that car, it's the lightest version of itself ever made. And so, it's a special thing. And, that car on the day was insured for $7 million on that day. And that's the sort of thing you have to block out of your mind when you're filming. You're just like, just another car,
I got some space
cool.
and it's all right.
Yeah. I mean, it's running, nowadays, I guess a single clutch gearbox feels a bit old, but in that car, you kind of don't mind because one benefit of a single clutch gearbox is weight. There's just so much less weight in one versus a twin clutch, but also to engineer a twin clutch to deal with that much torque too. So single clutches just inherently deal with torque more, and this thing in terms of torque, I think it was, what is it? It's like, I think it's over 1,000 pounds-feet, not Newton meters, like pounds-feet. So it's like the most savage thing. And it was just really crazy loud too. Like anytime I get in a new turbocharged car and I'm like, why does this sound so boring? I look back on older cars, turbocharged cars, I'm like, well, this sounds phenomenal. Why do older? I'm like, why do new turbo cars sound so bad? So but again, things like the exhaust system it's a 3D printed titanium exhaust, and the tip of the exhaust is more than a BMW M4. So when you start to build the components of this car, and you're like, oh, how have they achieved this? It's because the checkbook was blank. You know, they were just like, whatever it takes. So it's it was a special journey experiencing it. Incredible
cars. They are in every now and then. I do these like 5-car garage type things, or someone says like, if you had like a stupid car, what would it be? And I'm always like tempted to have like a Yesco or something in there, just because I'm like, that is to me like peak nutty at the moment of like stuff. Like, okay, maybe I would have something with a V12, but you look at the Koenigsegg and go, well, they've just taken everything to the extreme. No one else goes quite that far yet, and it's just another level.
It's nuts. Yesco will be phenomenally interesting because it's the first time that they've put a different type of gearbox in their car. So all of their quote performance cars have the single clutch box, and their sort of Grand Tourer, like the Regera, has this direct drive thing. So technically no box. And this new box has 9 clutches, yet it weighs half the weight of a twin clutch box. And the shift speed is like just nanoseconds.
Yeah.
That will be super interesting to sort of finally feel a driver's Koenigsegg with a gearbox that will probably react in a similar way to a twin clutch, but with the weight of a single clutch.
Yeah, and it's like...
Game changer.
Yeah, it's like half the weight of a 458 gearbox, but handling 4 times the power or something.
It's the most ridiculous thing. So that will be really interesting. They were supposed to be going up the Goodwood Hill climb, but I don't think they are now, which is a shame. So
we'll know by the time this comes out. So this will be I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. We'll have seen what's coming at Goodwood and all that sort of stuff.
Cool.
So there's no point in really commenting on it because we haven't seen it.
Well, no, that's it.
Keeping your skills sharp during this time of driving all these Koenigsegg's and whatever, you done a bit of racing and you've now moved on to a bit more. But you did a bunch of Caterham racing.
I did Caterham Academy last year through 2020, which was remarkable that even happened, because when you look back on how restrictive 2020 was, we just managed to slot in the calendar as an open air event. It was easy to social distance because you're outside and you didn't share a car or anything like that. So it's fine. But that was my first year's racing was in the Caterham Academy last year. And it's one of the best things I've ever done in a car. It's just the most phenomenal experience, both from in terms of enjoyment, but the learning you do, like how much it improves your driving game. There's something about, as you well know, Sam, being in a racing environment, your cognitive switch gets dialed up to a level that you don't find on a track day. And I think that's just this like primal competition in you, right? It just sort of, something gets unlocked when the visor goes down that you don't get when you get on a track day. And so even though I only had 6 races in that series, I honestly learned more in those 6 races than I would do in 6 years of track day, because you would never find that amount of determination in yourself to find that last piece of traction before you end up in the gravel. And, when there's other cars around you and other competitors around you, everything just ups. And I just felt the value in that from a learning point of view was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's an amazing, isn't it? Like I remember like the first season I did in a Radical in the SR1, the first 8 races or whatever it was, just being like, oh shit, like this is what the hell. And then you look back at like how you were doing at the start, and you're like, oh my god, I mean, I don't think I'm very good now, but I was awful back then. Yeah. And the whole thing of, like you said, track day to even test day. Track day to test day is a massive step up.
That's a step up. Yeah, absolutely.
Track day, everyone's like super polite. Like, you're not allowed to overtake them. Test day, people are just like, get out the way!
Fully launch it, don't they? You know, it's, I mean, most people, unless they've been on an RMA track day, which I think is probably the only organization which allows overtaking on both sides.
Yeah.
I think even the most seasoned track day guy, when you get lunged up the inside from a car of a different class to the car that you're in, I mean, you know, any downforce car, if you're on the track with a GT car, they're like the most aggressive mosquito ever. They just like straight up the inside, and they will outbrake you and undertake you and dive you and chop you up. And race day is only really, for me anyway, I felt the only difference between a race day and a test day is there's points at the end of it. Like, I've seen some test days which are absolutely mental.
I think there's a lot of people that do test days, and they definitely often drive a certain manufacturer of car, but they just don't seem to have any respect for anyone else whatsoever. And you're like, guys, it is a test day. It's not a race. So if you put my car into a wall, that's not a legitimate, not safe, cool. fair thing. It's not cool. But yeah, like, and then I think something that I've found, and you start to get comfortable with quickly, and you probably found this, is being really close to other cars, like just behind, like right on like someone's bumper, like flat, on someone's full bumper, or like right door to door going around a corner, and like both of you sliding, and you're like, oh, I think we got this.
Yeah.
Did you have any standout moments in the Caterham?
Yeah, I mean, every race had its standout moments, I guess. You know, what I found fascinating about Caterhams was actually, even though the theory of the Academy is everyone there has had no race experience. That doesn't mean to say they haven't been testing all year the year before, you know, but in theory, no one's had any race experience. And what I was quite surprised at was actually the top sort of, you know, 6 or 7 of us. We were going around like a shoal of fish. It was that close. We were just this constant pack. And, you know, I learned a lot of racecraft in that moment, because as you were just saying, the proximity that you have to adapt to isn't, I mean, you know, if someone hasn't experienced it, it's like we're going to die here. like we're going in, because Caterhams are so small. It's not uncommon for us to go in like 4 abreast, right? So after that, after you've learned to be comfortable around each other, and what I always found weird about Caterhams is they're classed as closed wheel, but when you see a lot of the crashes, they are not closed wheel. Like I've had many an incident where I'm interlocking a wheel. In fact, one of the videos I put out last year, the thumbnail I used for the video was a screenshot of one of the crashes which took place. And this dude, sure enough, interlocked wheels and just gone and launched. And he is airborne, right? That generally doesn't happen if it's a closed wheel car. Yeah. So open wheel, you know, wheel to wheel racing is pretty dicey. But from a strategy point of view, Caterhams have the aerodynamics of a house brick. And so weirdly, on the last lap, you don't want to be first because you want to benefit from the aero tow from the guy in front of you. What quickly transpired was actually you could do with being 4th or 3rd, because almost the deeper you are in the aero train, the more hole you've got in the air. And it wasn't uncommon from some dude who had been like nowhere, like 5th all race, just goes right down the start finish straight, massive toe, and get like 2nd, you know? So that was nuts. And like incredibly disheartening too, because like you put all your effort into like the best racecraft you've got, and then some guy just catches the bloody toe and breezes past you, you know? So that was cool. And then, you know, for me, it was finding the other drivers who were basically the same speed as you, because there was a lot of strategy. The race in Caterham, it wasn't won in qualifying, but unless you had a tow partner during quali, you didn't really qualify that well. So after a few races, you would find a mate who was your speed, and you go, okay, on this lap, I'll tow you, and then you'll get the pole, and then we'll swap roles.
Yeah.
And that would help a huge amount. And basically, if you didn't have a tow partner, you weren't top 4. So that was really important. So it was a huge amount of strategy before the race even started. And then after that, it's each man for himself, isn't it? So, all right, thanks for the tow. Now, see you on the battlefield. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's
thanks for the tow. I've actually got a flat. I can't tow you. And you're not... No.
That's it. So, yeah, but it was great. Made some great friends too. And I actually think that's one side of racing which doesn't get spoken about that much, is everything, because you'll know from, time in SR1 and 3 that there's a lot of hanging around, isn't there? Like,
so much.
There's a lot of just,
ask any wife, girlfriend, partner, mate that comes along to a race.
Yeah. There's just a load of hanging around. It's weird. You'll allocate 2 days of your life to about 40 minutes worth of seat time if it goes well, if it works out well. And it's really, really hard actually that. So what is important is the people that you're hanging around with, right? It's like if you're hanging around with a load of people you don't like, it's going to be a really long weekend. And so after a while, I think by and large, I mean, you always got some rogues, but by and large, I think when you're in a paddock bunch of people who race, you're all of a very similar mindset. And so the fun in the pits is great, and you meet some great people, and then you'll end up seeing those guys outside of a race, and you know what I mean? It's more than just that. And I think that's important.
It's so much more fun being at a race event when you know people. Like if you know people on track, off track, around, rather than the idea for me of turning up somewhere and racing by myself with a team I didn't know and against people I didn't know is not actually, that's really not very appealing at all. I know a lot of people, that's what happens, but for me, it's about hanging out with a couple of friends for a weekend. You go and have dinner in the evenings, you hang out during the daytime, you do a bit of racing. When you're on track, you've met probably half the grid at least. And so when you're on track, you know them. You're like, that's so-and-so in that car. They are going to just catapult down the inside, take someone else out. Let's avoid them. Or this person, I know him. I can tuck in behind him. He'll brake at a sensible place. And you have the most fun.
Yeah, it's true. I think as well, when I first started, it was all quite serious. It was all about, being on the podium and lap times and all of that. And you quickly realize that there's so many other variables involved in this going right or wrong that is outside of you just driving well. And so if you're there just for the podium, it can become quite unenjoyable pretty quickly. So you've got to have a good time while you're there, because at the end of the day, it's not my career. You know what I mean? I'm not there for anything more than just content and fun.
You're not getting promoted into another category to then, race. No
sponsor deals
money.
Coming through. That's it. Exactly. Yeah.
I was chatting to someone yesterday, actually. We were talking about racing, and that they were looking at getting into maybe doing some racing at some point, and we were just talking about budgets. And I was saying, well, the one thing you should know about budgets is no one ever tells you the damn budget. You go and you say, let's say, I think you'd probably tell me how much it costs, but say, James, you've just done Caterham Academy. How much is it going to cost? And Caterham will say, it's going to cost X. This is the package, blah, blah, blah. And then you ask anyone else on the grid and they're like, yeah, that's exactly what it cost. And you get to the end of the year and you've spent 3 times that. They're like, I mean, that's actually what it costs. We just didn't tell you. We don't want to admit that it costs freaking 50 grand a year or whatever. All racing, everyone undertells you the amount, which is just stupid.
It's a black hole for cash.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It is a siphon of income. It's not, it's not, if you're not into spending money, don't go into motorsport, because it really isn't. It just evaporates cash. It
does.
And if testing, they don't tell you about the testing. They're like, they're like, how many, because it's time and money, and they both use it in equal measure. There's a lot of it. And so when I first started, I was thinking about my schedule throughout the year too. I was like, how many weekends do I have to allocate to this? So they're like, and what they say is, we've got 6 race weekends. And then they stop the conversation.
Yeah.
What they don't say is that we have Friday testing. So actually means you've got to be there on the Thursday evening.
Yeah,
and
Thursday night.
Tracks are never on your doorstep. So Thursday's a travel day now, right?
They're never anywhere you want to go either.
Yeah, nowhere you want to go. They're always in the back arse of nowhere. And so Thursday's travel day. Then you're doing testing all day Friday, which means you've got to have a new set of tyres, minimum. Yeah. Right, so reboot that. And if you're testing the teams there, you're going to pay for the team. So tyres, testing team, hotels, travel, fuel.
Coach.
And then you've got race day, coach. And then if you're really unlucky, you might have a scrape. And then if you want to do race 2, for the weekend you've already paid for, which you're going to want to do, then you're going to go to the parts place and you got to go and buy some parts to put on the car that you've just, binned or scraped or whatever because you thought you were Lewis Hamilton going to set the next lap record. And then race day, you need some more tyres because you don't want to go out on the ones that you were testing on yesterday. And then, before you know it, you've had a long, long weekend that's cost you a lot of money. And if, going back to the point we were just talking about, if you spin it and put it in the gravel and you don't come away laughing with your mates, what's the point, right?
And one thing that I did on a particularly bad, it was a weekend where the team got it wrong and I got it wrong and it all went a bit wrong. And I worked out the cost per minute of racing. Of driving, it was just cost per minute in a car, and it was a disgusting figure. And you're like, why am I doing this?
What am I doing?
I think it puts people actually. The more you do sprint racing, and I think you'll probably agree with this actually. The costs are you could do an endurance race for the same cost as a sprint race. It just depends on what car you're in. And when you do an endurance race, you get a lot more seat time.
A lot more, like
a crazy amount. So to keep the costs down, you what most people seem to end up doing is driving a high downforce car on slicks and wets and going up a couple of categories. So how's that been?
That's literally what I've just done. It's actually, I'm really fortunate in that, while that series does have an inherent cost in it, Praga's supporting me a lot through that. Yeah. So it's been good in terms of offsetting a huge amount of that cost. But still, it's not. It's still inherent. I mean, buying a new set of slicks, wearables, consumables are not supported. And a set of slicks is 800 quid, So and when you do a test day and 2 races the following day, that's at least 2 sets of slicks. And it really depends on how competitive you decide you want to be that weekend. You're like, I'm really in the mood for putting in the times here. Then you're going to want a set of slicks on each session. But in terms of experience and just mind-blowing, what have I landed myself into? The world of downforce, I mean, you experienced it from a fairly early stage being in SR1 and SR3. Honestly, Sam, it's recalibrated my brain as to what is possible on something with wheels. It's really... And the biggest challenge for me has been my own fitness.
How's your neck?
Mate, my neck. Well, my arms, actually. We don't have any power steering. The car weighs 640 kilograms, but it's got 1,000 kilograms of downforce, and we have no ABS, power steering, aircon either, or traction. And for some reason, I think the caster on the Praga is quite an aggressive setup, and so the load that it generates through the wheel, I've been likening it when I'm trying to explain to people, because I like how heavy can it really be. Yeah. Imagine opening the wheel on the door of an old vault every corner. That's what it's like. That's like I'm opening a vault every single corner. And I come out, dude, and I'm absolutely destroyed. I mean, it's not... I was racing with Abby Eaton. She's a pro driver. She's currently racing in W Series, which is amazing for her. She's supporting several Formula One races this year. And why I'm saying that is she's a very accomplished driver. And at Alton Park, she took her glove off and she had 2 flaps of skin hanging off here, down to the pink of her new skin, because of how hard it is to turn this bloody steering wheel. So when I get out and I'm trying to set context as to like why I take my helmet off and I'm look destroyed, all I need to do now is like show Abby's hands and they're like falling apart. I'm like, that's how hard it is to move this bloody steering wheel.
That's
and on top of that,
point.
we are in summer. We have no aircon.
You're enclosed.
We're enclosed. We have the full race suit gear on. We got the fire retardant stuff underneath your race suit, and then you got your bloody hands device on and your balaclava under your head unit. And I just step out completely shot because the G-forces, I'm not used to it. The car's capable of 3G around the circuit, like Silverstone
or something.
It's not doing
Magnus
it.
Beckett's or something.
Always. Yeah, exactly. And through that, I mean, it's just, and I'm filming all of this and I'm trying to share it with the audience, and it's really difficult to convey how fast it is and how extreme it really is. It's so next level, the amount of grip it's got. So the thing that sets the most context for the audience is when I take my helmet off and I'm like panting, and like Jimbo comes along and sticks the camera in my face, expecting me to just do a piece to camera straight out of I step out of the car, and I'm just like, hold on a minute, man. It's like, I'll be there in a minute. I'll just hold on a second. And I'm like taking my suit off and I'm like blowing down my top and throwing me a bottle of water, and that sets context more than me going, take it from me, I can take this corner and flatten fifth, No one actually knows what that means. So it's it's very much like that. And I imagine that's what it was like in the SR3s, no?
It's like that in SR3. I don't know. What's a lap time in a Praga like Silverstone?
So we did Silverstone like GP. Yeah, we did GP circuit yesterday. Actually, I'm aching a lot. And the super fast guys are a 1:58. They're the super fast for the full GP. Yeah, that's really really quick. I was doing like 2:04s.
Yeah.
And that's my fast. When I say I'm doing 2:04s, I did a 2:04.
Yeah.
I'm not doing 2:04s. Yeah. So
that's probably it will do it in a slightly different way to my Radical, because it's got the Praga's got more power, but it's a bit heavier. So it'll be slightly faster straights, but probably slightly slower in the corners or whatever. And I think we do like 2.5. It's over 2.5 G through like Maggots and Beckett's or Abbey Farm. That stuff's like flat kind of thing. And I don't drive the car very much, and my neck, like if we go and do a heavy test day, so like 4 or 5 sessions of like 4 40-minute sessions or something.
Yeah.
By the time you're going around the corner, I don't know whether you have one of these, but like you get your neck's just like
it just falls over.
You're just resting on the left, and then you go to go the other way, and then slam, it goes around the other way. And it's actually that point in time, if you're racing, and people might have experienced this karting with your hands and your forearms, where you're just like, big. I'm just destroyed, and my pace is probably 10 seconds slower. Like it wouldn't surprise me if you lose like 5 seconds.
Honestly, I think while there's areas in my driving technique to be improved, I think I'd probably find the most time in my overall fitness. Because, I mean, brick car, they call it brick car endurance, but it's not really endurance. They're like hour long. So it's not endurance. But
it sort of is. I don't know what endurance is classed at, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then how long do you drive?
It's not a sprint. So it depends on the team's strategy, but generally my co-driver and Miles have been splitting it half. Silverstone was 2 hours, so we did an hour back to back each.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, as it happens, we had a electrical failure 3/4 of the way in, so I only did about 40 minutes, and then the connection from the steering wheel to the gearbox broke, so we effectively had no gears. But up until that point, like 40 minutes into my stint, I was thinking, I could probably do with this ending now.
Yeah,
I was whacked out. Yeah.
In the pit stops, do you have like a mandatory time you have to be in the pits or anything like that, or is it literally like fastest?
Yes, we do. Yeah, which funnily enough has increased due to COVID because they have to disinfect the car. So they actually like spray the steering wheel and all that sort of thing. Despite the fact when we get out of the car, we're giving each other big hugs. You know what I mean? But it's just Britcar trying their best, to
do what they can
make it all happen. So normally it's a minute and 30. I think we're like a minute and 50 now.
Yeah.
For a change.
There's enough time to like get out. And do they fuel? Do they fuel?
We only fueled at Silverstone, with that being the 2 hour. During the driver change, we also did a fuel stop. And during the fuel stop, the driver has to be out of the car. He can't be in the car while it's being fueled up. So that fuel stop ends up being about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly that. So drivers step out, fuel dump goes in, then you hop in, and something else that went wrong for us, the starter motor had broken, and we didn't know this, and we wouldn't have known if it wasn't for the fact that we had to shut the engine off during the fuel. So we switched it off. I hopped in and I pressed the starter button, and I'm like, nothing's happening. I'm like, have I remembered to like put a kill switch off or on, or something like that?
On, off.
And then you're like, whatever, and then the like team opens the doors and they're all diving in, trying stuff, and turns out it had just died. So our team bump started me out of the pits. And it took them so long, they got to the edge of the bloody white line of the actual pit exit. Any longer, and it had been done.
Yeah.
Any longer. So, yeah. But, it was going great. Miles actually handed the car to me with a 28-second lead. We were like on a flyer. And then the
Muggets got in.
Starter motor gave us that cost us 40 seconds, bump starting it out of the pits. And then as it happened on my laps, the bloody gearbox went. So DNF on my first Silverstone Enduro. Gutted. Yeah.
And then I guess you're not. You're still at the point. Have you got all of your signatures and stuff like that now?
Yeah. I'm on a international D now.
B? Yeah.
Yeah. So I did D because I was supposed to be doing the Le Mans Classic this year, and it got cancelled. So D was the specific license for a classic over there. But I think after this season, I'll probably upgrade to C.
Yeah, you just have to do like they check your heart and whatnot and vision and stuff like that.
That's it. Make sure you're not blind and about to pass out.
There was a point when I was close, and for a C you need 12, I think, and but it's 12 finishes, and it doesn't count if you're doing an endurance race. Is one signature. A 24-hour race is one signature.
It's ridiculous.
It doesn't matter if it should be like if you've done a stint. If you've done a 3-hour stint, you should get one signature.
Sure. Yeah.
Nope.
I think you should get a signature for every stint that you complete.
For sure.
Because a 24-hour race is more racing than I will do my entire year.
Yeah, exactly. And you could do, in a 24-hour race, you'd probably do 6 hours of driving or something like that. And a sprint race is 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know. But you could literally just do like a weekend of Caterham and get more signatures than you would doing a 24-hour race.
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
So if people that are looking into getting their license and they need a certain number of stamps, just go and do some sprint races, because things happen and you may not finish and you may not get the signatures.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it might not be your fault.
And the nature of the beast is you'll have travelled to like Knock Hill from London. And then you'll have a DNF and you'll have to go all the way back again. Really pissed off.
Of all of the modern classics that you've been driving, I think it's probably modern classics. I don't really know if there's a definition, like a clear definition for what would be a modern classic. But I think that's my favourite bunch of cars.
Yeah.
What's been your favourite things you've driven, and from some highlights in the last, I don't know, year? Highlights,
yeah. I really enjoyed. Your F40 formed part of it in a strange way. It wasn't a series when we filmed that car, but I've since had a chance to have a go because I think we tried yours in the damp in like February, which wasn't the best time. But since then, I was like, right. I had a small taste of it then, and Ferrari's Seven Oaks arranged for me to drive one in the dry. And that was fantastic experience. That was great. The F40 was pretty amazing. That was pretty serious. It was the afternoon I drove it. It was great. It was beautiful and sunny. But the guy who owned it put when I say straight through tubing exhaust system on it, I mean from the ports. Like this thing, it was just ridiculous. And it was fine for the afternoon, but you couldn't have lived with it. It was just way too much.
Way too
much. But as a highlight, that was really up there. The just something about a Ferrari manual V12, like naturally aspirated manual Ferrari V12. Just all of the way that everything was, the weighting of the clutch matched the weighting of the throw of the gear shifter beautifully, and then there was no power assisted steering, and so when it all got up on cam, everything just felt so beautifully balanced, and the throttle response under heel toe, the satisfaction you got under executing a decent under braking lip down of this V12 was just euphoric. Like that was an incredible experience. I also as well, the RS 997 3.8 RS and the RS 4 liter, the 4 liter really ticked the boxes. That was a thing, isn't it? That was a special thing. Yeah. Interestingly, I mean, as much as I prefer the 4 liter, there was something about the calibration of the suspension of the 3.8 for the road. On the road, probably a sweeter spot. Actually,
you want the 3.8 car with the 4 liter engine.
With the 4 liter engine, that's it. I was actually speaking to. Who was I speaking to? Henry Catchpole. I was talking to Henry, and he was saying that he believes there is an adjustment for the suspension on the 4 liter to bring it closer to a 3.8. It won't be quite as close because it has rose joints. So inherently, it's just going to be a stiffer car. But you can soften it off a bit. But yeah, those two cars were just outstanding. The SLS Black Series, that really surprised me. The SLS Black Series, because I was never really a fan of the SLS. It's a nice Grand Tourer, but it's not the sort of thing that you'd like, that you'd, consider an exotic special sort of thing, right? It was just a bit, I don't know, there's something about it was just a bit sloppy. It's not the car for me. No, that's it. The Black Series. So I did quite a lot of research into that car because other than surface info about performance and engine tweaks and stuff like that, there wasn't a great deal of info out there of what the majority of changes were from the SLS. And when I got in this thing, I was like, this is a complete, it wasn't they tweaked a few things. It was a different car. I was like, what is this? So anyway, I got speaking to Norman, the founder of Apollo IE. And he had sent the Apollo chassis to a company called HWA, who run German touring cars. And they developed the CLK GTR and things like that. And it turns out that HWA were commissioned to develop the SLS Black Series. And so what you actually have is a GT3 chassis. So that's why it felt absolutely nothing like an SLS. So and when I learned about that, I was like, this makes a huge amount of sense now. Because the front end turn-in on this thing was like a GT3 car. I was like, this is absolutely insane. The gearbox, the calibration was just completely different. It sounded way cooler. It was more stable. Everything about it, and that was a car that really caught me off guard because I did think it was just going to be one of those special put a badge on and a bit more stick on a wing. Whatever. But it wasn't. It was a fundamentally different car and something that drove really, really well. So that was cool. Yeah, we've done all sorts of things, man. I mean, one thing I did last year, it's not technically a modern classic, more of a resto mod, was this Volvo P1800 Cyan.
How was that?
So this thing, it caught me off guard too. So these guys were in the country. I think they'd taken it to Top Gear for a photo shoot. And at that point, no one had actually driven it. And they said, we're in the country for 4 days. We'd love to drop it off at the studio. I was like, all right, awesome. Didn't know the first thing about it.
Yeah.
But it looks sick. So I get there and I find out that these guys in Sweden who run a Volvo touring car team had taken the touring car engine and put it in this Volvo, right? And then done the full like Singer sort of treatment on it, right? So it's the most beautiful looking old Volvo. I didn't realize this Volvo came before the 250 GTO. It's a really old car. And they fundamentally re-engineered absolutely everything. It's carbon fiber, body panels, the full works. And it's set up by a touring car team with a touring car engine in it, mated to a 6-speed manual box. And that as well, that was super cool. That was awesome.
That came out of nowhere, that car. Like, you know, when you're just like,
blah,
blah, blah, new car announced.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what? A resting mod from a touring car? What?
I know,
and they
right?
manage Volvo's cars, don't they? They run the Volvo touring cars. And you're like, what's going on here?
And it's quite amazing because the team that built it, they don't make cars. They build they run touring cars. That's what they do. And then they were like, why don't we just have a go at this? And they just absolutely nailed it. It's brilliant.
It's amazing, actually, being involved in racing on like a low level and whatever, and getting a bit of an insight into it. The people you meet working in the teams and working on the cars, they're all there because they absolutely love doing it.
Yeah,
and often they all have these like random side projects that you find out about, and you're like, you do what?
Yeah.
What? And they're like, oh yeah, and like they're all so good at just like doing various things and stuff. It's well worth, I mean, obviously, talk to all the people, but like I think a lot of people don't. They just sort of arrive, get in the car and drive.
Yeah, I've also found out that a lot of the engineers working on cars are brilliant drivers too. Like way better than the people racing. Way better than me. You know,
way better than me.
Yeah, like there is literally in our team now. There's a guy. He is our like head engineer. And he's raced Formula 3. right? And so the guy who sets up the car is giving me tuition. You know, it's like, it's amazing. He steps out and he's like, looking at the data, you should probably do this. And I'm like, wow. I was like, that's amazing. You know, it's really, really cool. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's great like coming across all of these people. What's the state of the JWW Garage at the moment? What's in?
Man,
what's out?
What's in? What's out? I'm trying to think. What have we got? We got a 991 Gen 2 manual GT3,
Still
which
going?
I use as a daily driver. That's about to hit 40,000 miles.
Nice.
Anyone who doesn't follow the channel, I've pledged to take that to 100,000 miles. So that is a long term. When I say long term, I'll just keep it. I think I'll just keep it. I mean, after 100,000 miles, first of all, who's going to want to buy it? But second of all, I'll have so many memories on it that I just think I'll just keep it. So 991 manual Gen 2 GT3. We got Aston Martin DBS manual.
Oh yes,
V12.
Yes.
Love that thing.
I think last time we spoke, you just put maybe done the hi-fi or something on it.
I had Apple CarPlay upgraded in it.
Nice.
Because it has like MS-DOS for sat-nav in that thing. And I don't know about you, but you become accustomed to running around with Waze or Google Maps, whatever your preferred, sat-nav is. And for me, I used the DBS plenty in the areas that I knew. But as soon as I was like, I want to go on a road trip, I was like, I'll take the GT3. Just because I knew I could plug in Waze and, even for speed cameras, right? Like just for all sorts of things. So guidance, infotainment, you're on a long journey. You might want to tune into your podcast, right? So and you don't have the option to, and the DBS didn't. It literally had like a Volvo infotainment system from the 90s. Like it's just the worst thing ever. So there's a company called Aston Installations who ripped the car apart from the inside, put in all these fancy new wiring looms, and then you pick it up at the end of the day and there's a nice lightning port in there and you plug it in and CarPlay comes up on the screen and it's bloody brilliant. And from a use case point of view, I find myself now enjoying that car more because I'm more comfortable going on road trip in it.
It's
So places
stupid, isn't
I
it?
don't know.
How
It's stupid, yeah.
small a thing that is, but how, to me, a big difference. Like, if a car, now most of my cars don't, but if a car had adaptive cruise control, I'd be using that on the motorway all the time.
Absolutely.
But even just
now,
cruise control.
You've got so many bloody average speed zones
Yes.
on the bloody M6 or wherever. And they go for miles and miles and miles. And some of these cars, if it's a sports car, the throttle is sensitive. And to keep it on that like 60 mile an hour for like 13 miles, I have to go here. It's nice to just press a button and go chill. You know?
Exactly. And you can just like relax a little bit.
Yeah,
concentrate on
it just takes a little bit of stress off. You know,
not doing 120 miles an hour.
Well, there you go. Yeah, exactly that. So
what else? So you've got the DBS.
F12 TDF. Still enjoying that. That's a lot of fun. That thing was supposed to have a lot of trips and things lined up for that. Because it got cancelled so much last year, I even tried selling it. Yeah. And then as things eased up a bit and there was options to use it, then I brought it back again. And I'm thankful I did, because I got to make a lot more content with that. And that's been great. But I don't really know what the plan is with that car. It's one of the longest standing cars on the channel. The nature of automotive YouTube channels is there's always chop and change. Yeah. And it's kind of like they're almost characters on a show, the people begin to like them or not like them. And after a while, when you've ran one for 3 years, well, actually almost 4 years now, you've kind of done the content with it. And I think, while to a degree, some of the cars I buy are a personal choice, I wouldn't have this many cars if it wasn't for the fact that I'm running a business that films cars. Yeah. So a lot of the purchasing decisions behind cars is, how will this activate content? Will the audience like it? Is it new? Is it exciting? Yeah. Etc. And having that car for the last 3 years, I've kind of ticked every box with it. We did Targa Florio with it. We drove it up a volcano. We've done all sorts of stuff with it, and it's been great. And now I'm like, now what? Do I do it again? I'm not sure yet. So, but so that's about 992 Turbo S. That's a great thing. That is a cool car. Weirdly, because I've made this commitment to do 100,000 miles in the GT3, I generally don't use the Turbo S for what it's intended for. It's quite odd. So Turbo S is like, let's go do a drag race, So one of the videos we did in that, in fact, it was the first drive with the car. We took it to Sywell Autodrome or somewhere like that. And we did 211 miles an hour in it the first day. The first day we drove it. It was amazing. That was cool. So, but as a road trip car, that's obviously what that's about. Controversially, I actually think that car's too stiff. I think it is. It's as stiff as my GT3. Yeah, really? And it's not. Yeah, and I don't mind it being that stiff. I'm used to cars like that. But the purpose of it, I don't think it needs to be that stiff.
Has it got big? It's got big wheels on it, doesn't it?
Huge.
21s?
Yeah, the reason it's got big wheels is they decided to fit 10 piston brake calipers to a larger diameter carbon ceramic disc, and to accommodate a caliper that big around a disc this big, you have to have larger wheels. So it has I think it's staggered. I think it's 2021s. Okay. And so it's got some squat. It's got some stance about it.
Because you'd think that the 992 Turbo would be a much better cruising, drive around kind of car than the GT3. But you're saying they're quite similar. Is it more refined inside?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's way more. Not only is it more refined because it's a turbo, but it's more refined because it's a generation on as well. Yeah. I mean, my GT3 is a 991. The turbo's a 992. So all of the interior and everything is all taken that step up to 992. Yeah. But fundamentally, it's no different than a Carrera 4. There's just a few more bits of tweaks here and there, and you can spec them very similar. Like you could spec an entry level Carrera to have a not dissimilar interior. If you wanted, you could tick all the carbon boxes and it would feel, a similar car. But
is it quite loud? It's like road noise.
Yeah, it is, because it's got such massive tires. So it's a heavier car. I mean, it's almost 300 kilograms heavier than the GT3, which is a lot. Yeah, it's huge. But of course, it's four-wheel drive, so it's got an extra diff in it. There's probably got 100 kilograms of sound deadening and wiring looms, because it's got like 18-way adjustable seats and 12 speakers and all of this stuff that the GT3 hasn't got. So yeah, the road noise isn't great, but I think that's predominantly it's fat tires. But for me, when I take it down a British B road, which anyone who's listening outside of the UK generally are quite terribly surfaced, it rides in a how do you describe it? You know how you've got like secondary ride, you've got primary ride, secondary ride. The staccato bumps, as it were, shorter bumps, rather than the sort of big compressions, are quite sharp. Okay, and it feels a bit more like it's been through the GT department rather than the road car department. And it's not that I mind it, it's just that for me, different cars should have a different application and feel. Yeah. And when I get out of it, it feels like a quieter GT3 because it's so stiff. Yeah. So, it's odd. I haven't read that too much, and I'd be interested to hear what other journalists think about that. Because you hear my experience anyway.
Like a lot of people said when I first started seeing, reviews and whatever, that it had shifted more towards GT3. Like it felt more involving than any other turbo before, and all that sort of stuff. And I think it is an interesting one because, like your point, and I think my understanding of the turbo is it's always been that kind of a bit like the 812. Like it's a very fast but comfortable car to kind of cruise around with, and also be very fast. And you can take it to a track if you want to, but it's not really what you're doing. As soon as it starts becoming more hardcore, you use it less, and it starts to shift away from that role that it possibly had. People say, you could just get a 4S rather than a turbo or a GTS or whatever. But it's an interesting...
Yeah, it's a funny one.
Place where you...
I think, one of the things which summarized it for me was when it had launched and journalists got their hands on it, it lapped the Hockenheim ring quicker than a GT2 RS.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's your problem. I was like, physics have to give at some point, and to keep that mass in check and make it go around quicker than a GT2 RS, you're going to have to stiffen things up a bit. And sure enough, that's what it's done, So...
And the thing is, if you drive it anywhere else other than the UK, not quite everywhere else, because someone was pointing out, like, you go to sort of Eastern Europe or something, and you've got some serious holes in the road. But you drive in Germany, Switzerland, France can be a bit iffy, but you would have a very different experience because the roads are so much smoother.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
I had a good chat with a guy called David Pook, who does the tuning or some tuning on Alpine, I'll say that correctly,
Alpine?
A110s. And we were talked about this topic of cars becoming too stiff and whatever. And he said the main reason, and I was sort of ignoring sports cars because sports cars, most people assume that they're going to ride a bit rubbish, is we're trying to eliminate roll from all of these cars. So as soon as you start adding anti-roll bars or really stiff anti-roll setups, you completely ruin the ability of the wheels to go up and down independently of one another on the left and right hand side of the car.
Right, wow.
And therefore, the ride quality just drops like through the floor.
Dramatically. Yeah.
Which, interestingly, because you've driven a Taycan, I thought that went down a road. I drove one on the smaller wheels, probably still 20s. Okay. And that was one of the best riding cars I've ever been in, I think. Right, and we talked about that, and apparently he reckons it's also to do with the fact that because we've got this battery pack, which is quite stiff in the bottom of the car, and all the weight is down low, they haven't had to ramp up the anti-roll.
Yeah, of course.
And now the wheels can move around. Like you get in an older car and you go, like something my GT3 RS is the exact opposite. Go down a road that's like heavily crowned and loads of bumps.
Yeah.
Like my old 911, for example. You get in that and you go down an old bumpy ass road. You put your foot down and it goes in a straight line, and it deals with the bumps, and it's not that bumpy. You get in the GT3 and it's going left, right, left, in the ditch there, right, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And you could go down a road faster, ish, in my old 911 or like a sedan than you could in a GT3 RS, because it's trying the entire time to turn you into every single ditch, bump, and everything.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, isn't it? It's a real thing, you know, and that's exactly what I'm finding with the turbo. It's probably when you see it and you step into it, it's very refined. It's almost like S-Class did turbo sort of thing. It's like a most beautiful environment, but then all of a sudden it's got this harsh edge to it. I'm like, I wish it was just rounded off a little bit. So
but it is like 700 horsepower.
Well, it is, yeah. It is, yeah. It's an absolute beast. I mean, it's really, in terms of something that's going to pick apart a B road, I don't know anything. I honestly don't know anything that would do it that well. But there is definitely a slight compromise in the daily ability of it as a result of that. I think so anyway. I mean, I don't know. That's
all of these things, it depends on your own personal usage. I had a very long chat with some people about GT3s and saying my ideal spec. I've evolved my ideal spec on a GT3 or RS or something. It's the driver's seat is a fixed bucket. The passenger seat is a folding bucket. Wait for it.
Yeah.
And then behind the passenger is a passenger seat.
Oh,
and behind the driver is no seat.
I like it.
Then you can have three people.
Here's a question for you, right? Because I listen, I love the GT3 touring, as most people do. However, I seem to be the only one who doesn't love it as much as I think I might do if it was an actual different product proposition.
Yes.
Meaning, if it had back seats in it, why does removing the wing classify that as a different product? Right? It's a D-winged GT3. It has no other use case. It doesn't facilitate any different function. So why is it now a touring? Like, to me, when you put a touring badge on it, it has to do something else that a GT3 doesn't do. And right now, you just look a bit less obnoxious. Right?
Yes, that's it.
Like, okay, I don't have a fat wing.
It should have like back seats. I don't know what the process is and how much extra effort, whatever, to have back seats in. But there's back seats in other 911s, so come on.
I know. And I was like back seats, and also, and this might be a stretch too far, but I think there was a 996. Yeah, softer ride, just slightly more road bias ride, effectively. Yeah, just slightly more road bias ride. Though I think it was a 996. There was a 996 where the rear window opened up sideways, the 570 McLaren 570 GT did. And I saw this photo and I was like, now that's a touring, right?
Yes.
How amazing would it be to lift up the rear window of a 911 and use that cave of usable space, rather than having to stuff bags between carbon fixed bucket seats that come in a GT3.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think they should have just said, oh, and I've got the D-winged option, not a new product class.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
But at least now, with the new GT3 that one can buy, but a lot of people can't buy, you can just take the wing off. And it has a ducktail.
And it looks cool. It looks really decent.
It looks cool.
It looks great, actually. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how that will upset the aero, but I fancy it. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll look great. From the shots I've seen, it looks good. And bearing in mind, they're still fairly new. I've seen loads of people doing it. So it must be quite easy.
I was going to do it for my RS this weekend. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to take it off for like a day.
Yeah, do it. See how it goes.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
And then first roundabout,
around town at normal speeds, it'll be fine. You know, it'll be okay. I think
below
it'll be
100 miles an hour, it's going to make no difference.
Yeah, no difference. I'm sure it'll be fine. So yeah, I might do it as well. Actually, so I've got a 992 GT3 arriving in about 3 weeks. And the plan with my the plan with my current GT3 was, okay, maybe I can de-wing that now, because I thought, what's the opportunity here? Rather than having two GT3s that do the same thing, if I de-winged it, it's the closest thing to a touring because it's got the 6-speed manual in it. And I saw a company that does like a ducktail conversion for it. So you can put this little ducktail on.
Okay.
I was speaking to the guys at JZM, and they also have a kit. And what actually I quite liked was they actually revised some of the aero underneath the front splitter.
Okay.
So it's not just take the wing off and hope for the best. There is actually some consideration there to
the
it
front
changing.
end,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So I quite fancy doing that actually at some point.
Because I think I was looking at this, like, what is the process of turning a 991
GT3
into a touring? Because actually, a touring has the normal Carrera wing that pops up.
It does. Yeah, it has
which makes it
automated wing.
Yeah, and I wonder. I've not seen, but I wonder
retrofit that.
What's there underneath, and how much. Presumably, it's not a massive job because I don't think it was a big process. But are the electronics there? What's the just? Do you just get the back of a C2S and just go dunk and it's done with like a little bit more, and then tweak the aero intake a little bit, and you're probably sorted.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Yeah, it'd be worth speaking to a Porsche dealer about maybe and going, hey, what if I wanted to do this?
Because it's got to be cheaper than buying a touring.
For sure, yeah. I mean, tourings are still at a premium now.
And there's none for sale.
No, there's hardly any about. And when they are, they're like super low mileage at a crazy premium. So, you might be better getting a slightly higher mileage GT3, and which are now starting to like settle off because new ones launched and whatnot. But actually, the manual GT3s are still fairly rare. There's plenty of PDK ones out there.
There's just no cars for sale at the moment.
No, it's a funny one. Well, there's this. Not that this applies so much to pre-owned cars, but you've obviously heard of the semiconductor shortage.
Yeah.
That's happening right now. So my Porsche dealer told me if I was to place an order on a facelift Macan, and if it had the adjustable seat function with the option to program it to different drivers, it's a 12-month wait for a Macan based on the shortage of these bloody chips. It's crackers. And so as a result, all of the used stock's gone, no new cars are coming in, and everyone else is looking at or holding on to their pre-owned cars, and the prices are going bonkers. It's nuts.
Yeah. So if you're in a place where you've got like cars, new-ish cars that you can do without, because the problem is it's all very well selling it for a high price, but you want to replace it with something, you can't get it or it's expensive. So it's not really much point.
Do we looked at ordering my wife a Range Rover, and currently the factory's shut because
you like getting robbed.
Yeah, she did. She really likes one.
That's probably not such a problem.
What should I do?
Where you are. Wait, hang on a minute. Is there a new Range Rover coming soon?
Well, there is. Yeah. In fact, on my journey to Bicester, as soon as I get on the M40, I see them, and they're all camouflaged. But I see this new Range Rover doing some sort of shakedown, so it can't be that far away. I would imagine it'll launch next year sometime. But anyway, we didn't go for the Range Rover yet, which is probably not a bad thing. But exactly the same story right now. The factory is on pause because they've got all of these chips that they can't get hold of. It's gnarly.
Yeah. It's mad. It is mad. But we'll get there. All these things will reset.
We'll That's it. Yeah.
Whatever, and everyone will realise that they've no longer got any money or whatever.
I'm hopeful for next year. This year feels a bit of a write-off. Not quite as much as last year, but there's definitely an overhang, isn't there?
Yeah,
from it.
Massively. Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah,
right.
That's it.
Well, normally wrap this up with 5 questions, but you've been on here a few times, so there's no point in asking you exactly the same ones again.
All right.
Five car garage. What would you have?
Oh man,
this is the reason I sold my bloody F40 asking this question every week.
Because you realise the cars you actually own weren't in it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So just before we get onto that, why are you selling the F40?
Why am I selling, or why has it sold already for loads of money or whatever?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly that. Okay. When
why
we
am
are
I selling it?
Recording this, it's about to go for sale.
It's a good question. It's I've had it for 6 years. I've used it
6 years. Wow.
Yeah, I've not used it very much, and it's not really been for most of its life. It lived outside of London, and it didn't do very many miles. But the only miles it did were me driving out to sort of Oxfordshire, get in the car like we did when you came.
Yeah.
Go for a blast, put it away. So only doing like 30 miles, 50 miles, whatever at a time.
Right.
But like coming back, like hair standing on end. Whoa, that was an experience. Time to put it away. That was good. And then I sort of thought, you know, like it's obviously the values have gone up a bit, and you're there with this car, and it worries me parking it in places. Like if it gets scratched, the respray is a real problem because it's an F40, and it's the whole weave thing. Because you can see the weave through the paint. If you if you like fix it, you're gonna lose that.
You can't see that,
and that stresses me out a little bit. And so it's all of these factors, but mainly if I moved house in London, so I now have a double garage and a bit of space to have another car. So I've got 3 cars at home that I can drive straight out. And I had the F40 here for like 3 months. And I drove it once.
Wow. Okay.
And it's because
so
it's
just
like
don't use it.
Like if I'm in London, I take the little electric car, zip around.
Yeah, totally.
Right. If I'm going on a road trip or driving somewhere with Rosie, for example, like we're not taking the F40. Like we could, but not.
No.
So you get in a different car, and then I was like, well, I'm not taking it on track days, because it's worth too much and someone else might punt it into you. I got an opportunity to do a private media track day. So basically only car on track, pretty much. And no rules. Do we like? Which is the best way to do a track day.
It's the best way to do it, yeah, for sure.
But I drove it on track, and I basically said, like, I've now signed it off. Like, I've kind of done...
Okay,
I've
tick that box.
I've driven it on the road. I've had my fun. I've driven it on track. I've had my fun. What would I want to do more with this car? It would be like, I would like to drive it more on track. I'm like, no, that's a bad route to go down, because it will get down. It will eventually come unstuck. And like, I'll have just as much fun in my GT3 or just as much fun in a Cayman. Like,
yeah, totally.
Track fun is about hooning, not the car you're in. And it sort of just got to that point where I'm like, nah, I'm kind of done. Like and I get told by a bazillion people whenever I say I'm thinking of selling it, no, you'll regret that. Don't sell it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, if it was just the car and the car was worth 200 grand or 100 grand or something, and I just had the car, I would keep it, because I think it looks so sick, and I would drive it like a couple of times a year, and I would love that. But I don't. So like it's time,
and it's not worth 200 grand.
No, and it's not. And you go,
more than that.
I could use this money for something else. And like I think,
well, that's fair enough, man.
And pandemic as well. Like I don't know whether you found this. I'm really like, what do I enjoy about cars? What do I enjoy about playing guitar? What do I enjoy about all this other stuff that I do? And like, is this item that I'm owning adding to that or not? And cars are very expensive to have. And you go, I'd swap it for something else that I might use. 812.
No, absolutely.
Very different experience.
By the looks of things, you've already got more use out of that than you have the F40.
I've driven more miles than the 812 already.
Yeah. Which is great. And, you know, they are ultimately for using, aren't they? You know?
Yeah. And if you're not using it, and I love
That's the point.
It's just the A or B, and which would you pick? And the answer is I'm picking my GT3 RS more of the time than I would pick the F40 for all of the reasons discussed.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
that's it, really. We'll see.
There you go. Okay,
Hopefully
so
someone buys it for lots of money. Do you want to buy an F40?
That's it. Do you know what? I was really tempted when I drove the red one from Sevenoaks. I was like, actually, yeah, cool. And then weirdly, I had a similar mindset to what you've got without having even owned one. Because I thought, this is going to be such an occasional car.
Yeah.
That, when am I planning on using this? And really, for me, a lot of how I approach cars is what content am I going to make with this thing? And really, cars like that become quite restrictive in terms of things that you can and can't do with them.
You want to be able to go on a snow tour.
Exactly. Yeah. You want to be able to, and you're not going to take an F40 on a snow tour.
No. Because you must have been through a similar sort of thing with the TDF.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
High value, and you're like, mileage.
I've never taken the TDF on track. Not done that. I know the audience wants it, but I haven't done that. I've done a few road trips, which have been great. But, after a while, you're like, okay, I've done some big road trips now. While I don't mind using the car, equally, I'm not here to put like 10,000 miles on it. Yeah. So it's like, you're almost putting yourself into a hole. You're like, okay, I've done 2 big road trips now. Is that the road trip content done now? Unless it's like I really am going to commit myself to having that car for a long time, which I'm probably not. Like, no. I mean, I don't know, maybe another 18 months, maybe. Yeah. But that means you still have to realistically think, if I hand this car over with, 4,000 miles versus 14,000 miles, it just is a very different story. Yeah. Yeah, and so, I'm just at that similar point. Like, it's a lot easier to use that car. You don't have to think, where am I going, or plan a route or anything like that. But it's a similar thing in that I generally only... it's mileage, and I only get it out if I'm going to use it to film something. I don't use it really in my personal time that much. Yeah. Because I'm like, there's no value in this from a channel point of view if I'm not sharing it. So every time I use it, I'm like, okay, camera's rolling, you know what I mean? And then, it's a different thing. So
it's weird that, isn't it? Having a car that you're like, every time I use this, it's documented. As in, like, literally every time this car has been used, it's documented, which is a weird, like, it's anyone that's not into, making content of sorts or whatever, has probably not come across this. But actually, you probably have taken some pictures on your phone or something, but it's very weird. It's weird.
It's a really odd one. Yeah, it's like, but also the way that you approach the use case of living with that car, there's an element of like personal journey to it, because you ultimately, I'm the guy buying it and running it, but I use it as a tool for a channel. You know what I mean? So I'm not like, I never like, hey, wife, let's go to the restaurant. We never do that. We just don't do that in that car. She'd sooner take the bloody 4x4, right?
And you've got a kid, so
got a kid as well. That's tough. The other thing, So it is tough. I mean, whether the 812 Competitione's launched, and I don't know if that's going to do the value of the car any favors or not. And you have to think about things like this. I've also heard that this 812 isn't the last naturally aspirated V12, which I thought it would be.
One more,
I think they're going to squeeze out one more generation. So, it's not like it's the last of its kind. Weirdly, back on to this 5-car garage thing,
where we
I would probably have one in the garage. I would probably have it in there because that platform, as you've just found out, you've just ticked the box with the 812, and it's this beautiful combination of exotic usability. You know? And that's quite rare, to be able to go on a road trip in something that sounds that good, looks that good, and that can be used in a manner. A GT3, you could say, has the exotic usability, but it's not the same as an 812. I mean, it's just so beautiful and refined, and the better half doesn't mind spending time in it. Like, if I said to Luce, let's go on a road trip in the GT3, she'd be like, how about you go on your own? And I'll see you there. You know what I mean? So whereas the TDF or an 812, she'd jump in it, right? So in a 5-car garage, I would like an 812 or an F12 TDF or something like that.
Yeah,
So
a V12
so that would
GT
be,
car.
Yeah, a V12 GT would be super cool. So that would be one. A GT3. It has to be a GT3. Whether I think it would probably be a normal GT3 with wing.
Yeah.
I really do like the idea of a touring, but I've been dailying my GT3 now for like 2.5 years, and the only thing is sometimes you're a little bit conscious of the wing sometimes, but it's not like an RS wing. It's not completely like silly.
Yeah.
So
and the car's pretty like hench anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty hench. That's it, man. Yeah, it's not like it's that subtle. So a GT3 would be cool. I think you have to have a track car in there, right? Or is this not part of the gig? Like, do you have to have a track car?
I'm always having a track car.
Yeah. So
sorts.
a racing car is. I think I would like to have a car to race, and this gets quite hard because do you go down the sort of classic car route, which is gonna hold its value way more than
and you can drive on the
modern
road.
car route. Yeah, you can drive it on the road. I mean, like a Porsche 911 2-liter cup car.
Yeah.
Would be amazing, right?
Great.
So you can use it on the road. They hold the value well. You could do Le Mans Classic and race all over the shop.
And a bunch of road
go,
events.
yeah, exactly that. So you could go and do like Targa Florio or something and do some hill climbs and things like that. That car's got a lot of breadth and scope there. However, my newfound love for downforce is disproportionate, and I'm like, I would quite like
LMP2.
I mean, exactly right. You could go for an older LMP2 car, and while you're not going to race it that often, you could do like an endurance legends thing. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Something like that. I'd be pretty cool. I'd be happy taking an LMP2 car on a test day and not actually doing a race, so you could test it all the time.
Yeah,
right. That'd be sick. So that'd be cool. The Praga is awesome actually, and then you could race that.
Put some
track car of sorts.
whatever steering, blah blah, hydraulic steering.
Yeah, I wouldn't pound some bloody power steering on the thing, so it'd be a nice day out. So I'd have a race car. I quite like the idea of an LMP2 car just to test with.
Once
and then
you've
take it somewhere.
Once you've sampled some downforce, I think you always
there's no going back.
You always have to have some of it. This is why I've still got my SR3, and like I don't know when I might race it again this year, but I might not. But equally, just a couple of times a year, I go drive it, and I do like 2.5, 3G round the outside of someone else like, on the limit in their supercar, and you're like, this is different.
It's pretty decent. This is pretty decent. Yeah, in Brick car, it's a mixed class, so we're on with full blown GT3 cars, and there's a 911 GT3 full slicks and wings, and the Pragas literally driving around the outside of this thing, and I'm like, this is like by anyone's convention, that GT3 is absolutely ballistic. And then this whole new realm of physics takes over, and it just like sucks you through a corner. It's mind blowing, and once you've sampled that, there's just no going back, man.
That's it. It's the whole thing of like, I think you first get into sports cars and you drive them fast on the road, and then maybe you're lucky enough to get to drive some supercars and stuff, and you drive them on the road. Yeah. And then you're like, might start driving things on track, and then you start driving race cars on track, and then you start driving downforce cars on track. And once you've driven a downforce car on track, you're like, well, I'm never going to try and drive a road car that fast on track because it's pointless. Like, I might skid it about a bit or whatever, but like, there's no point in trying to set a really fast lap. You might as well just get a race car with downforce.
Well, let's face it, race cars ruin track days, don't they? Like,
properly.
When are you ever going to go on a track day again?
Even track days ruin track days. Like, test days ruin track days.
Test days ruin track days. Yeah. But when you get into a proper car and you're on a test day, just you go on a track day and you're like, why is everyone having a Sunday lunch on the track? It's just like so
or you're like,
chill.
You're in your Praga and you're coming up to Maggots Beckett's and you're like, I know this is like flat on the way in, and then a lift for the left,
slight lift,
and then a lift for the right, and like someone's in front of you in, I don't know, 911 Turbo
GT3
S, 992 Turbo
Yeah.
S, and they're hard
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the brakes, and you're like, get out of the fucking way! You've ruined my whole lap.
Yeah. It's just a different realm, So
So funny.
yeah, I think I would definitely have a race car, and I mean, I do love. Look, I really enjoy the Nürburgring in a decent road car, like in a GT3 RS, and it is a bit different on the ring because it's very much a road circuit, and the runoff isn't conducive to when a downforce car lets go, like it really lets go. So
they're not
on
that
the ring,
bad.
I'd love to take a GT3. You know what I mean? A GT3 around the ring's great. Yeah, and I don't know what GT3 it'd be. I'd like an RS4 litre. If I was to have one GT3, I'd probably go for that
4
car.
litre, yeah.
And then I'd have to daily something else because I don't want the big wing on all the time.
Yeah.
And then a daily, I don't know. I've got an Aston Martin DBX right now, and I'm really enjoying it. Half of it is because it's so different to every other SUV out there.
Yeah.
Like most SUVs, Range Rover aside, they all share the same platform, like literally the same car.
Yeah.
So like an Audi RS Q8 is a Urus, which is basically a Bentayga, and
Yep. Same powertrains, all that.
whatever,
Blah, blah.
same powertrain, same stuff, and these brands go about making it look their own in a very good way, but when you get in one and the switch gear's in exactly the same place and it looks the same, they just put some Alcantara on it to make it feel a bit different. You're like, man, I could have bought a Volkswagen Touareg.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? They're like, okay. Whereas Aston went really crazy deep on this program and they built their own platform, rightly or wrongly, I don't know. There's probably a reason that everyone shares platforms.
It's cheap.
But Aston was like, no, we're going to build our own. But as a result, it really is it's completely its own feel.
Yeah.
You get in it and it's got that Aston sense of occasion and refinement, and inside it's absolutely huge. It's got more legroom, headspace and boot space than a Bentley Bentayga. So
Nice.
it's decent size, only I just think it brings a different sort of feel to that SUV space, and I've never been a big fan of SUVs generally.
Yeah.
But this thing drives like a Vantage on stilts. It's pretty cool actually. So I'm enjoying that. If we'd have had this chat a few years ago, I'd have said RS6, but I actually prefer the previous generation RS6 than I do this one. I prefer the C7
Well, this is
to the
this
C8.
is an interesting point because I've
Yeah.
been looking at. Probably at some point in time I have to get a practical car again, and well, I've got my E208. That's great, but you can't really put very much stuff in that. And I was like, well, what would I buy if I was to buy a thing? And you look and go like, well, RS6 is an obvious choice, but it's brand new and it's going to depreciate loads. So, but also, I look at the older one and go, probably I would choose. If you said you can have either, I'm leaning towards the older one. Smaller tires, gonna ride better. Looks cooler. I think kind of looks a bit cooler.
Yeah. No, I do too. And there's something a bit more authentic about it. I don't know what it is about the new one. Like, listen, I wouldn't turn it down. I really like them. It's a brilliant car. But there's something about the old one. I mean, I got to a stage where I thought actually I'd quite like one. When I was going down the Apple CarPlay route with the DBS, there's an Apple CarPlay upgrade for the C7, and I thought, well, as soon as I heard that, I was like, man, this thing's becoming really compelling now. Like, you can get an RS6 performance, low mileage. They're like into the like 50 grand mark now. The car that was 120 grand like 3 years ago.
Adaptive cruise control, all the stuff.
Exactly, all the jazz. I thought that is a solid car actually. So yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, but right now I've got this big Aston and it's a bit of fun. It's cool.
One car, rest of your life.
One car, rest of your life. It'd have to be a GT3. It'd be a GT3. Yeah. It just ticks all. When I say it ticks all the boxes, it ticks the most boxes. In that, it ticks a lot. Yeah. You can track it, you can daily it, you can road trip it. It's very reliable. Modern day Porsches are built incredibly well. They're expensive without being obnoxious. It's like, okay, if you have to swap parts, it's not cheap, but it's not Ferrari.
Yeah.
And to get in to one as well. They're not. Listen, it's an expensive car, but you know, if you look at the equivalent offering from a Ferrari, they're like 300 grand.
Yeah, so they hold their value reasonably well.
They hold their value really well, and there's something about using them. Like with age, they take on their own character, and they're not delicate about being really used.
Yeah.
I think for me, what summarized the GT3 for me the most was I did a road trip to the Nürburgring with me and a friend in the car, bags for the week. We did 4 days at the ring, and it just so happened to be the hottest day on German record for 4 days straight. So all we did was got through one set of tires and drove home again, and it didn't skip a beat, you know. And I was like, and on the autobahns cruising, it was great, and you got Bluetooth in your sat nav, and then on the track, it was putting in proper lap times, you know, and it was just great. It was cool, man. So if that was my one car, I think it would be a GT3 of sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. I was driving back from this event at the weekend, and in the morning, I had the choice of driving 812 or my GT3 RS. Not a bad choice, not gonna lie. And
not bad at all.
I decided I'd take the GT3 because I haven't driven it in a while, and I've driven the 812 a lot. I was like, okay, let's just give it a bit of a break. And driving back from the event, following Talal in his touring.
Yeah.
And I was just following, and I called him up, and I was like, Talal, this is just going to sound weird, but like this morning I had the choice of an 812 or my GT3 RS. And like I drove the GT3 RS, and now following a GT3 touring in my GT3 RS, I'm just a Porsche guy. I don't know why. Like there's something like I really connect with these cars and this brand on a whole nother level too. And Ferrari is something different, and it is special, and the cars are special, but it's not for me. It's just not the same. Like I don't have the same personally. I don't have the same connection with the brand as I do. And like for me, the 812 is a car that I will own, and I'm going to very much enjoy the experience of using. But I'm sure I will sell it at some point. Like it will get replaced by something else, different, whatever. But
so your 3.8, do you think you'll just keep that? I think you should keep that.
GT3
is what I'm saying.
GT3, I think now I'm looking at, you know, like, because I've wanted a touring for a while, and I've been looking for one for a while, and I ended up buying an 812. It's different, but anyway,
nothing wrong with that.
Not massively different in price, and I'm very much enjoying that experience of having a paddle V12 car with serious boot space. And
it's
the GT3
super
RS
helpful having that practicality.
Is the hardcore manual Porsche can take it to the track, whatever experience, and going, right, I've got these two different offerings. And yes, you could sort of put them into the middle, and probably just about, I think I would be very happy with, let's say, something like a touring. But now I've got the RS, and I'm not getting rid of it. And it is a rawer experience than a 991 touring by like
100%.
A notch, like a decent notch.
A decent margin, totally.
And going, actually, I think this GT3 RS, I'm gonna keep it for a long time.
Yeah.
Use it for the stuff I want to use it for. Drive it more, and probably always have another sports car that's kind of more comfy and paddles and whatever. And it could be a Porsche, it could be a Ferrari, it could be a Lotus. Like I don't know, and just that one rotate. But this GT3 is staying, man. It's staying.
Super cool. You should. And again, going back to what we were saying earlier, the more time you spend with a car, the more memories you have on that car.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we did gumball in that car years ago.
We did.
You know, I remember, and there's all of these great experiences in it. Yeah, twice. Yeah, crikey. So it's, I think for me, a lot of the time, there's always other cars. But, I mean, one of the cars I guess I do regret selling it is my Speciale. Yeah, because I had so many great memories in that. You know, I flew it to Dubai, and it's not every day you send a car from the UK over there, and the best man at my wedding used that car, right? Yeah. To go there in, and so it had all these special memories, and for whatever reason, I decided to sell that car. It's a funny move, that.
These things happen, and you buy, you know, at the time, as long as you're making the right decision at the time, and you know, fast forward 10 years, I might go, shit, I should have kept that F40. But I'm really happy with my decision at the moment.
Time. Yeah,
and like
that's the main thing.
And the thing about cars is they take up space. Obviously, this is a large amount of money as well, which is not an inconsiderable factor, but also space. And like, I don't have space for loads of cars. Yeah. So
it's not like collecting watches, is it? Or you can put them in a roll.
Yeah, exactly.
You need a massive garage.
Just put another one with its receipt and its papers in the box and whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, it's an interesting one. And I think the 5-car garage, it's about the amount of space I have for cars. Yeah, I think really. As soon as even 5 is like far too many for me to like live with. But 5 seems to work if one of them's a race car as well. So that kind of almost doesn't count. Someone else looks after it.
That could be the team HQ.
But there's something I'm thinking about. Like, let's say if I started again and I had 5 spaces, I wouldn't necessarily. I think there's a whole bunch of significantly cheaper cars I would like to own for a bit, just because. Like, a car I'd like to own is the Boxster Spider, but the previous one. The ones that are all white.
Gen.
I think they're kind of cool.
Yeah.
Convertible. I think that'd be fun to have one of those for a bit.
Yeah.
But I think we have this thing where when I first moved into my place in South Ken, I had 1 parking space, 1 street and 1 off-road. So you basically get the most expensive, coolest thing you can afford. That goes in the garage.
And pocket outside.
Yeah. And then then like you might have a daily and that lives on the street. And then you end up with 2 spaces somehow. Maybe you rent a space somewhere. And then that's also like the next like most expensive amount I can spend on a car, and you have 3 cars, and it sort of works like that up until a point where you've got. If I suddenly had 40 spaces, I would look at it very differently because adding a car doesn't cost anything, whereas if your parking space is very expensive and you're going to have to drive somewhere to go and get it, you're not like, why would I buy a car that costs, I don't know, 100 quid? Because I've got so much faff to add it to the garage.
For sure. That's something else as well. Proximity to where you keep your cars is like a game changer for use case. You know, as soon as I started storing cars elsewhere, I just didn't see them. They just didn't get used. You know, it's a nightmare. What
lives at home? And what gets driven the most?
I take very few cars home, mostly because we had a bit of a scare with a few people following me home because I got JWW plates on the back of every car. Yeah. And I had people like literally follow me off the motorway, follow me home. Thankfully, they were all nice. When I say all nice, there were 4 separate incidents over a 6-month window when I used to bring the F12 home. Yeah. I mean, that in itself was pretty, in your face, and then you put JWW on it as well. So now I daily the GT3 with no plate on it. And you can say, oh, well, a GT3 is fairly identifiable, but nothing like an F40 TDF. Yeah. So it's not. And particularly if it hasn't got a plate on it, it could be someone else's car. Anyway, I did that for a while. So the majority of the cars are bunker, NVN, or storage. So we're actually in the process right now of looking for a place to have one consolidated garage because we got cars spread out and, cars I didn't expect to buy. Like the DBS wasn't really part of the plan. It just came up at the right time at the right price. And, that Volkswagen XL1, I mean, that was a super curveball car. I just always really liked it. And it came up in an auction.
Did you buy an XL1?
Yeah, XL1, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Amazing. So that came up we added that to the channel last year. Yeah. It came up at an auction and it was the right car in the wrong room because everyone who was there for like Escort Cosworths and things. Okay, and then this XL1 rolled through and everyone was like, the hell is that thing? We ended up buying that. And so you accumulate stuff, then all of a sudden I don't have the space for it. So we need a garage. We need one place. So we're going to need to grow the bunker soon and get like a 1 unit. So yeah, it's cool. And I think the thing with this is as well, if you could ask me this 5-car garage question tomorrow and I'd give you 5 different answers. That's it. You know, it just changes, and I like that. I think cars. There's always some staples, but I do go through moods and flavors. You know, depending on what's happening. Like right now, the idea of a resto mod, it really appeals. You know, because and I think a big reason for that is when you start to go and race, and you realize how much little performance you can actually get out on the road, you begin to look at your road cars very differently. All of a sudden, the use case of a supercar becomes quite small because even when you take it on track, it's nothing like a race car. You take it on the road and you can't really use it. So you're like, oh, well, what about a modern classic that sounds great, looks beautiful and drives well on the road, and then save the fast stuff on the track?
Absolutely.
You know?
This is where I'm going with my old 911, because that's like pretty fun. But I want to go now. I think when Ferrari sold, I'm going to look at this in more detail and see what the options are and whatnot. But I want to go older. I think I'll probably still go 911 because I'm just Porsche addict. But either that, and go for an early car, an early short wheelbase car. But I want skinny tires.
Yeah, so you can dance around easily.
I want it to be sliding at like 30 miles an hour.
No, totally. You want to redefine roundabout fun.
Exactly. At like not stupid speed. Yeah.
Sam, I'm so sorry. I've got to go and pick up my little boy from school.
Mate, it's been good to chat.
It's been awesome, and I feel we should do a part 2 sometime because it felt like that was just getting going.
It was good. Thanks very much for coming on, and I'll catch you soon.
Pleasure, dude. Yeah, will do. Thanks. Cheers, guys. Ciao.